My name is Oak with Oak Astrology School, and welcome to my channel. Today I am talking about the infamous Saturn return, and actually what I'm talking about is the myths associated with the Saturn return. I'm going to be sharing three main myths that I hear often in my professional practice as a consulting astrologer. Some of the things that we may think about the Saturn return that might not necessarily be as accurate when we actually have our Saturn return. And so the Saturn return is probably one of the most prominent periods of time that we're going to know of in terms of astrological life cycles. It's probably one of the most well known because it is probably one of the most important, as Saturn represents the planet of our limitations, the relationship to our structural reality, so society, our politics, our government, and even the structures of the world that we came into, so with our family. And ultimately, the structures of our life determine our reality. And so, in a lot of ways, Saturn also really represents our earthly incarnation. It represents why we are here. And those limitations that we experience are why we strive. They're why we push up against particular boundaries so that we can expand, we can grow, we can challenge those feelings of limitation. Life is about a particular type of, I guess the word that's coming to my mind is struggle, but life is painful, because there are these blockages, but through those blockages and through those lessons, we learn about how to move through adversity, move through those places of challenge, and that becomes a type of wisdom that cannot be taken away from us. So Saturn denotes a lot of the things that we push up against and that challenge us, but also when we persevere, we are going to achieve a type of mastery that cannot be taken away from us. So Saturn then also is a planet of mastery. And so mastery comes with age. This already speaks to one of the first things, is that there are certain things that we will not be able to achieve and to know until we reach a particular age. In a period of time where information is so abundant and we can have a PhD level set of knowledge by the time we're 12 because of the internet, that does not change the fact that wisdom is something that is integrated through time and through experience. And so these are the things that Saturn actually represents. And so that brings me to the first myth that I wanted to share, which is you will figure it all out at the time of the Saturn return. And no, like, you're not. There's actually I think that the Saturn return, what it does is that it is a period of time. By the way, it is from about 29 to 30 when we have our exact Saturn return. And so around the time of 27 to 32, we are very much in the throes of aligning to what Saturn is asking of us to do, aligned to that kind of relationship to those deep life responsibilities that we're starting to understand a lot more fully. But the actual Saturn return occurs around 29 to 30, like the heaviest and most prominent part of it. And so this idea of like, I'm going to be on my life trajectory at the time of 29-30, it is a sweeping statement to say that. And there is a relative amount of truth that there is some type of shifting, there's some type of clicking into place where our soul is getting more aligned. Because if you imagine, Saturn is coming to the exact same point where it was when you're born. It takes 30 years for Saturn to go all the way around the zodiac again and come back to that same spot. And so that period of time is where we are actually, for the first time in our life, from when we're born, we are experiencing the understanding of our particular structural dynamic that we're existing in, and also we are choosing our relationship to it. We're choosing our relationship to being responsible for our own life. And that is why there is a separation that occurs. Oftentimes, we're separating from family dynamics, family narratives, family structures that do not align with us on a deep level, as well as we are choosing how we want to align to society. And what our contribution is to society is heavily reliant on our ability to tune into what is true for us on a soul level. What is the work that I want to do for myself, and how is that a reflection of who I am in totality. And so the separating from family, and also figuring out the best way to align ourselves to society, even if our society has values that do not align with who we are fundamentally as well. So it's a very difficult time. And that is actually what we're doing. We are forming ourselves a lot more than our path is being formed for us. We are aligning so that we can walk our path with balance and with clarity and with truth and honesty with who we are. And so the idea of being on your path is relative. And actually, when we're looking at the chart itself, our entire astrology chart, our entire natal chart, we are looking at the totality of the self. So everything is part of the path. Everything is the soul. And the Saturn return talks about this idea of what are those limitations we experience within our life here. And, it does talk about a particular path that we're forming. I think that Saturn is a very particular part of the path. We can think of Saturn actually as the tiles or the foundation, the roadway that the path represents, the actual ground that we stand upon. And so in some ways, when we get to the point of our Saturn return, we are actually just more clear of what that path represents. And then I imagine that it's like you start building it. You start building it tile by tile by tile by tile until it's something that you can walk upon. And so the Saturn return in some ways represents that. And anything prior to that is us walking a path that is not our own. A lot of times our family forges our path, our society, our structures that are like hold us up in this world. Those are the path that we walk upon. And when we have our Saturn return, we are starting to assess, is this a path that I want to continue on? A lot of times we're being like, no, I need to choose my own. And so that's why you'll see a lot of people that are starting to actually find their pathway in their career at that time. Those decisions that you make at the time of the Saturn return are fundamental in terms of setting up that trajectory of where you start your path. So I'm currently 34, and astrology became my pathway in a very serious way when I had my Saturn return. A lot of people actually find astrology at their Saturn return because they know that they need to align. I would say that at the period of time that I'm at right now, at the age of 34, is where I'm actually starting to see the fruits of the path that I've chosen. So there's a big difference between me feeling like when I was, 28, 29, I was like, yeah, I think this is my career, Yes, I had a feeling, but was that like, did I make it? Was I making money? Was I, having a full-time practice? Like, no. So when we think of this idea as I will figure it all out at the time of my Saturn return, yes and no. There's definitely the relationship to Saturn where we are cultivating mastery. We are getting ready to find the thing that we want to master. So that's the first myth. And the second one that kind of leads to the next idea of, can I prepare for a good Saturn return? I remember I was like at 25, I was like, I can feel it. I'm ready to start preparing for my Saturn return. I want to have a great Saturn return. And so it's kind of also like a yes or no question. And I would say no, because there are certain things that occur at your Saturn return that completely align you to your path. It's kind of like getting a head start for a club that hasn't really opened yet. And so you're like waiting outside, you're preparing for it, you're imagining what that's like, but you're not actually in the venue until the party starts. And that is kind of like the Saturn return. There is just certain things that are going to be very specific to when you're in that period of time that you can only understand at that time. And so there are ways to cultivate your relationship to Saturn, which I think that is the way to prepare for the Saturn return. It's like there's things about our path that we don't know until we're in a particular period of our life. But we can cultivate that relationship to Saturn, which is cultivating your relationship to discipline, cultivating your relationship to responsibility, cultivating your relationship to commitment. And those types of things are those things come with age and maturity. It's like committing if you're in a period of time in your youth where you're just like literally trying to have fun and literally just like kind of a wacky and like drunk 22-year-old. Those are, I think there's a time and a place for all that. I think that that's important to be the age that you are. And so this idea of like preparing for your Saturn return, it's like, just be focused on the life that's in front of you and be focused on the consciousness that you have now and be focused on the reality of what is given to you currently, because when you have your Saturn return, Saturn does not discriminate. Saturn is always on time. So that when it's time for you to deal with that, it is time for you to deal with that. But I do think that, the harder that you work at your Saturn return, especially if you kind of have a career path in your early 20s, then, like I think that it does carry over. Like those experiences and that relationship to mastery, like it does kind of filter in. But in general, like if we're going to think about it from an analysis perspective, like your relationship to Saturn in your natal chart is going to tell you about your Saturn return. So if you have a good placement of Saturn, if Saturn is doing some good things in your chart, you're probably naturally Saturnian. So when you have your Saturn return, it might not be as hard. But Saturn return is always hard. It is a true initiation into our maturity. And so it's hard for everyone. And, and it's just harder for others. Like it really is dependent on your chart. Okay, so myth number 3, which I really love, is this. So let's say that your Saturn return is exact in March of 2021. And so March 2021 is over and you're like, oh yeah, so my Saturn return is over. It was great, da 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 da. No, that's not how it works. If we can imagine the sky as an entire 360-degree circle, and so there's 12 signs, and planets move through the signs, meaning that they move through these 12 segments in the sky. Saturn is so powerful. Saturn's gravity, Saturn's lens of reality, and it is so dense that wherever Saturn is traveling in the sky determines our reality. And it's really going to have such a strong influence in that sign that it's in the entire time that is in that sign. And that's kind of the idea of just planets moving through the sky in general, is that they have an influence for the entire time that they are in that sign. So they're going to affect that area. But especially with the outer planets, that is very true. And so from the moment Saturn enters the sign of your natal Saturn, even if your Saturn is at 15 degrees Aquarius, from the moment that Saturn enters Aquarius, from 0 degrees all the way until the end of Aquarius, until that very last 29th degree, that is the entire time of your Saturn return. I literally don't care what anyone says because you feel it. And there's a heaviness. It just means that the primary decisions that are being made, the most prominent themes that happen, the heaviest parts of it are those months that Saturn is exact on your natal Saturn. And that is usually within a year period that Saturn will kind of travel within that range of being very close to the natal position of your Saturn. And so like, let's say that you have Saturn at like 0 degrees Aquarius. And so Saturn is moving through Capricorn, the sign before. You're still feeling it, because literally, even though your Saturn return is 29 to 30, I could swear, and it really depends on people's charts, but it's like you feel the weight of Saturn from 28, 29, and into 30, and even after 31, 32, like it's just a heavy period. Imagine your soul being aligned to your path. Imagine your soul kind of crystallizing in a way where you're actually understanding the path that you're going to create in this life. It's not overnight. It's, mastery takes a long time. And so it is something that comes through a period of time. And so I guess the reason why I love this myth is because I think that a lot of people, when we're younger, especially in our 20s, we just have a sense of empowerment And sometimes that empowerment comes with a little bit of naivety, or it comes with a little bit of arrogance or cockiness. And so this idea of like, oh yeah, I went through my Saturn return at 29 and it was great and I'm amazing, as like, just wait. Like, just wait and see what that relationship to mastery actually is. I'm not trying to diminish anyone's amazing experience of a Saturn return if it was just so good, but I think in general, it is where we meet our limitations. And there's always a place where we are blocked and limited and restricted. And so, those are some of my thoughts on myths regarding the Saturn return. I gave you a pretty good rendition of the Saturn return itself. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I am Oak with Oak Astrology School. My website is okastrologyschool.com. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, subscribe. If you're interested in learning astrology, I teach natal and transit astrology that is very much focused on proper analysis, as well as using astrology as a tool for liberation and healing and counseling. And so, thank you so much and bless. Have a beautiful day.